Hello, everyone. My name is Beatrice Mukantabana from Veritas, and I'm here to moderate the session. Please open up the chat window for questions or comments. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the session. Now let's hear about how to migrate virtual workloads to AWS using APTARE and NetBackup Resiliency. With us today, we have Joe D'Angelo, Availability Practice Lead and Distinguished Engineer at Veritas. We also have Rich Rose, Senior Distinguished Architect, also known as Dr. APTARE at Veritas. And we have Henry Axelrod, Principal Partner Solution Architect at AWS. Joe, please take it away.
Thank you for that introduction, Beatrice. I just want to begin by saying how thrilled I am to be here speaking with you, our customers and partners at Conquer the Cloud. My name is Joe D'Angelo, and as the availability practice lead, I've had the unique fortune of being able to converse with a wide array of our end user community. And so it's with that experience that I want to share with you the approach that we at Veritas have developed to ensure a more efficient and expedient process for migrating workloads to the public cloud. So like any good methodology, you should always begin with assessing your situation. Know before you go, as I like to say. And with APTARE, our analytics solution, you will indeed have a solid basis for which you can begin your cloud migration journey. After which, you'll want to have a strong foundation for which you can orchestrate, in some cases, directly execute that migration process itself. And that is where the Resiliency platform comes into play. We'll demonstrate a little later on in this session on how that will actually work. If, however, Tier 1 applications are your priority, with InfoScale, you will have the flexibility to move your services at a moment's notice to the public cloud and with often negligible disruption to your SLAs. And this actually includes heritage Unix environments as well. And from there, NetBackup can serve not only as the core of your data protection in the public cloud, but as the underlying mechanism for seeding new instances, as well, whether it be Windows or Linux. And finally, we want to ensure you're able to maintain the overall process efficiency. And so we finish where we started with APTARE Analytics and its review capabilities. So to that end, I want to welcome to the session my esteemed colleague, Senior Distinguished Architect Rich Rose, to take you through APTARE's cloud assessment capabilities. Rich, floor is yours.
Thanks, Joe. We've got a lot of customers that have large on-prem environments right now, and they've been tasked and asked by their management to say, we need to get a third of our environment moved to the cloud in the next 6 months. And, it's a pretty daunting task because they don't really have a lot of the correct information to work with. They might have, tools in place, but they don't really have the kind of the analytics that can help them with their journey. So we, with APTARE, will be basically our main core competencies around chargeback and cost reduction and risk mitigation. But one of the things that we've done with the information that we were able to gather from all these different sources is be able to now help customers figure out, how can I right size my cloud journey? So we've got an example here of a report that we've done that really is kind of a standard thing that we've always done, that APTARE has always been able to do, which is basically looking at your on-prem environment. And in this case, we're looking at the memory statistics of various VM guests. This is just a report that we've had for years. We gather data from your VMware environment. We can now look at not only how many vCPUs are configured and how much memory is being it has allocated to it, but also what its consumption and usage was over a period of time. And so with that information, customers used to use that for various things. And now we could take that same information and actually use it to help with the cloud migration. If you notice on this guy, it has a bunch of CPUs configured, but it hasn't really used all that much over that course of time. So we then take that information and say, all right, how would that look then if we were to take that system and lift and shift it to the cloud? So we've got systems here that have, certain amount of vCPUs configured and a certain amount of memory that's configured to them. If you just took those as they were configured in vCenter and lifted and shifted them to the cloud, those systems would translate into AWS terminology. In this case, you've got everything from M4 16 extra large or T3s, various size instances that might be appropriate for that many vCPUs and that much memory. However, we've determined that because those systems are really not using all their vCPU and all of the memory that they have allocated to them, because we've been metering that, and we also know how many hours they've been running, we can make recommendations that's based on your actual usage as to what we would recommend that would be appropriate for the cloud migration. And as you notice, we're also incorporating the costs in there. So you can see that there's a significant cost savings. If we just took it as it was configured and moved it, lifted and shifted it, it would cost a lot more than the actual recommended size would actually be. And that's a huge savings. A lot of our customers are seeing just massive amounts of savings when they start analyzing it. And again, as I mentioned before, they don't have a lot of tools that can actually provide this, and we can do this out of the box and provide that, almost immediately and be able to help with that. I'm going to hand it back to Joe now. So now, if you imagine, we've kind of narrowed down the systems that we want to move to the cloud. We've got them right-sized. Now what? How do we get them there?
Thanks, Rich. So to your point, now that we have seen how APTARE can help you make your journey to the cloud more cost effective, I want to spend a few minutes discussing with you our resiliency strategy and how Veritas is addressing the needs of your most critical workloads in the public cloud. But before I do that, I want to welcome to our session Henry Axelrod, AWS Partner Solutions Architect, and just an all-around wealth of knowledge regarding cloud storage and resiliency. Henry, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Joe. Nice to be here.
That's great. So Henry, you've had a lot of experiences working with Veritas. Can you perhaps share with our audience some of the challenges you've heard from our joint customers about their plans and in many cases struggles when considering their options for migrating as well as protecting workloads in AWS?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously I talked to a lot of customers, as storage is a huge part of almost any enterprise or really customer, big or small. And, a lot of what we hear for our customers and even what we hear in general at AWS is customers are looking for ways to migrate. They want to know how to get started, how do they tie in, how does the cloud come in, and what tools are available to them. So I think as we started to look at the Veritas portfolio, one thing that customers really like is the fact that you kind of can handle their data and throughout the entire life cycle, whether they're fully migrating, whether they're running in a hybrid environment, and whatever their needs are from their most mission critical applications, all the way down to, their development and test environments, and be able to seamlessly move those from on-premises to an AWS environment and continue to protect those with the level of availability that the customers really demand. And, as they're moving to cloud, it's often a question of, what is provided for them on the platform versus what they're able to to do and replicate what they might be doing today on premises. And I think the Veritas tool set is able to really come in and help bridge that gap for customers.
Well, that is no surprise because we're hearing the exact same challenges, and thank you for those insights, Henry. Day in and day out. So that is why we have developed a resiliency strategy that's intended to ensure that not only your data is protected in the cloud, but your applications are resilient. But moreover, the experience you have with managing the two are consistent. Whether that's on-prem and AWS or between physical and virtual environments. Taking that all into account, Henry, how much stock do you see customers putting in having a consistent on-prem and public cloud experience when it comes to, managing critical applications and storage?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important for our customers, and anyone who's been around backups for long enough knows the kind of ultimate, achievement in backups is a single pane of glass, right? Which is being able to see your whole environment, understand your environment, have a single tool set. To manage. Customers often, one of the reasons we've seen some customers be hesitant to make that leap towards cloud is, am I going to have a fractured tool set? Am I going to have something that I have to do differently on-prem and differently on the cloud, where I need multiple different teams and I need to figure out what my new strategy is going to be? And it creates a lot of management and other complex overhead if customers have to think of using two different tool sets to manage their environment, and get especially customers that need things like reporting, right? Hugely important to be able to look across both environments. As I said, customers also run often in hybrid type setups, so there could be long-term need to be able to look across on-premises and their AWS cloud environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear that, because that is, again, the same conversations that we're having, the same challenges that we see customers faced with. And that is why we're so keen on having a platform, the Resiliency platform, as a way to orchestrate across all those different ecosystems. So why don't we now take a few minutes to kind of dive into a demonstration of the Veritas Resiliency platform, more specifically how it can help you accelerate cloud adoption while leveraging NetBackup, MSDPC, and at the same time, look out for in this process how we're able to benefit from those previous reports that the APTARE solution was able to show us. So this is a demonstration of the VRP dashboard, and what we have here is our global view into the console. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at the unmanaged assets. These are ones that we've discovered but aren't actually applying any kind of recovery plan or policy to. We're going to go ahead and select a particular workload here. It's a Windows guest. We can see that we've discovered that it actually already has a NetBackup recovery policy assigned to it. Go ahead and select that particular virtual machine, and we go ahead and we apply a service objective to it. In this case, this is going to be utilizing NetBackup MSDPC as a way to do remote recoveries. We see that we have the target data center is going to be in AWS. We see the on-premises are the Conquer Every Cloud data center. From here, we go ahead and we're going to define the availability zone that it's going to be in. And we're also going to be able to select that version of the instance type. And that's directly derived from the reports that we were able to achieve in APTARE. So we can now select an appropriate or more modest instance, depending on what was needed. We select some default values for the AWS EC2 environment. And here we actually can establish the specific subnet mappings and IP addresses. So really, a lot of the customization or personalization that's needed to move a workload that existed on-prem can all be programmatically included in the process with VRP. So whether it's the type of instance that's going to be instantiated or the network identification, all of that is part of this workflow. We go ahead and we can click next. We're going to go ahead and give this resiliency group a name. This is just an arbitrary name that we give it to for the purposes of organization. Call it Win 2019 MSDPC. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. Now from here, it's going to go through the process of establishing that resiliency group. And some of the processes or procedures that are being performed in the background are ensuring that I can authenticate to that particular virtual machine such that it can update any IP address information. It's right now in the configuring state. It's going to take a few minutes here to go through and complete all of that. The goal of which being giving you the opportunity to use NetBackup in this case as the data mover, right? So we've established the NetBackup configuration already. That would be sort of the precursor to this or a preamble to this configuration, establishing that deduplicated image in a cloud bucket using S3. Now, once it goes through this process, we can we'll see the different steps that are being performed. Now, Henry, let me throw it back to you real quickly here. How often do you hear customers struggling to do these kinds of steps manually?
Yeah, so I definitely we encounter many customers who try and put their own kind of tool sets or scripting or things together, which do work, but they create complexities at scale. And I think that's where VRP and NetBackup really kind of come in. As we see customers try to do this, they may do some conversions or other things for one or two machines, right? But as they start getting into the hundreds or thousands of machines, that's where they really start running into some complexities and need some tooling to really help out and manage out and orchestrate all that together.
Absolutely. And admittedly, while this example may be only a single virtual machine, the process is scalable. And as you can see from the dashboard, we've discovered the instance as well as the NetBackup images that we can select from. And you're given an opportunity here to choose whichever one that you want. In this particular case, we're going to go ahead and just select the latest image that's available to us in EC2. And we're going to click Restore. Now, the process that it's going through right now is quite extensive because it's hard to believe, but there is an enormous number of steps involved in moving just a single virtual machine. So we're having to communicate with VMware to actually shut down that virtual machine, unregister it from the ESX environment altogether. From there, we execute the restore process. And from here, you can see we've now switched over to the NetBackup console, the web UI, at which point it will then initiate the restoration process for that particular image. That will take a period of time in order to actually seed that virtual machine. Once that is then completed, we'll then go through the process of customizing that VM specifically for the EC2 environment. This includes assigning whatever security groups, any particular IP customizations, and so on. As you can see here right now, that particular image name has not been registered yet in the EC2 dashboard. And as we go through the process of actually recovering it, you'll see that eventually will form an AMI. That AMI will then be launched, and then it'll be instantiated. Now, admittedly, some of this process does involve watching a little bit of paint dry. It's hard to keep it too exciting when you're just looking at progress windows going through and ticking upwards. But understand that the goal here is not to disavow the fact that there is a lot of complexities involved with doing these operations, but rather making the process of automating them as simple as possible, or as direct as possible. So all of the storage elements of it, the network identification, the seeding of the particular instance, the particular image, point in time you want to recover from, and then of course, this could be 1, 10, 100 different virtual machines, all can be consolidated down into a single operation. And while it's being performed, the great thing about it is we are exceedingly verbose in terms of the information provided to you. So at any point in time, we know precisely what's going on in the environment. And as you can see now that VM now has been instantiated inside of EC2, and we can see that is now finally available to you to be able to log in and access. So while the process itself is straightforward in terms of what it achieves, you're taking a virtual machine from on-prem and moving into the public cloud, we recognize that there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of moving parts involved here. In this particular example, we're using NetBackup, but there's actually a data mover included with VRP as well, so that you could have workloads that get recovered to a much tighter RPO. With most NetBackup images, typically you're looking at on the order of every 24 hours or so. So if you have a workload that satisfies it, you're good to go. But if you've got ones that you want to recover or migrate to with a much tighter RPO, included with the Resiliency platform is the is a data mover as well that supports replication from VMware environments directly into EC2. So as you can see now that the process has completed, and that particular VM has now been migrated from an on-premises VMware ecosystem directly into the EC2.
Joe, it all looks so seamless.
It is so seamless. It is.
I know, but I'm still fairly new at this. Is the Resiliency platform a separate product, or is this how does it looks like it's just tied right in with NetBackup?
Well, that's the great thing about it as of NetBackup 8.3, as an end user of that product, you actually are given entitlement to use the Resiliency platform. So the ability to orchestrate the process of recovering those virtual machines, the ability to integrate with those different MSDP images, as well as the data mover, as well as integration with our InfoScale estate as well, all is included with your entitlement now with NetBackup 8.3.
Cool.
Awesome. So with that, Henry, I want to thank you for helping me, walk through this process. Just to sort of, to kind of close this out. I mean, in your experience, doing these kinds of procedures, how would you say that this process compares to a typical experience that a customer may have in terms of, simplicity or just overall ease of use?
Yeah, I think, and what you guys were just talking about is kind of a really, really powerful, Joe, especially with NetBackup 8.3 and tying all the kind of products together. Because NetBackup kind of handles, we have several different use cases that we see with partners, and often it's a journey that customers go through, right? So they may start with backing up their data to the cloud as the kind of first step of the journey, and then they may say, okay, well now I want to go and I want to do DR, right? So I want to take what I had and build on top of that. And then as they get more comfortable, they may start wanting to run workflows on there, and then they need to protect those workflows and also provide high availability for those workloads. So there's really, if customers have to work on that whole life cycle and that whole journey at the same time, trying to figure out what tools they're going to use and retrain their development teams and do all that, it adds a extra level of complexity. This, tying in together all those pieces really simplifies it, and being able to use the same data set, so you're already gaining the ability to do DR functionally without having to replicate a whole new data set by being able to use a NetBackup repository as a data mover for VRP is hugely powerful, because it enables customers to go right from having their data on AWS to having their DR on AWS without a lot of additional retooling and rebacking up and re-replicating.
Yeah, I mean, the refactoring, which tends to be one of the things that seems elusive or a little bit daunting, it's all handled in band, right? So the process of taking that virtual environment in whatever format and then making it available directly in EC2. Awesome. Well, Henry, thanks for those insights. That's been tremendous, and thanks for partnering with on this portion of the session. Beatrice, I'll hand it back to you for any Q&A that may have queued up during the session.
Thank you so much, Joe and Rich and Henry, for that great presentation and demo. So let's go over some questions actually that came through the chat. One of the question is the Resiliency platform an add-on product, or is it part of a hardware appliance product?
Oh, that's a great question. So the Resiliency platform itself, while separate in terms of how it's installed and deployed, it's not part of any physical appliance. It's actually installed as virtual appliances with the entitlement tied directly to your NetBackup licensing. So you would download and install virtual appliances for VMware or from the AWS marketplace directly to be able to instantiate those instances running there.
Oh, great. Thank you. Another question that came in through the chat. If you right size a server to the cloud, does that impact servers or apps that look for a certain amount of RAM, or is that purely virtual on cloud provider?
I'll take that one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So a lot of applications might tell you, even though our right sizing within APTARE might tell you that you only need 4 CPUs and 4 gig of RAM instead of 16 CPU and 32 gigs of RAM. We're going to tell you the right size that it needs to be, regardless of what you actually have to do. But in order to satisfy some software requirements, that you might have to actually provision what they tell you to. So there's nothing we can really do about that. But by and large, most of our customers, they've got tens of thousands of VMs that are on-prem. It's only really a small percentage of them that are really bound by those vendor configuration settings.
Yeah, those constraints. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rich. And another question that came through, is it possible to consume APTARE reports using APIs?
Yes. So that's really around the automation part of things. So a lot of what APTARE is doing can fetch the information that you're going to need. And then we could feed via our REST API any type of automation tool that you would want. So an example of that report that I showed earlier, if you wanted to get that list of VMs and what their right sizes would be, you could then prioritize them and then make a REST call. And it would then feed you that list of guest names that could then be fed into an automation script, which could then handle the migration automatically. So yeah, we've got a built-in REST API that can take all that data and then feed it to some automation.
Oh, that's great. And one last question actually that came in. Actually, a couple more questions.
Yeah, bring them.
Do you plan to build VRP containers to deploy on Flex?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. So
I was going to ask that myself.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, good question.
I'm not going to overstate the roadmap for those items, but I will say this: that like Thanos, containers are inevitable. And I would say that most strategies will involve some form of containerization that way, so that the Flex appliance could be used for that. How long or how far out that is, I can't say, but that is absolutely being looked at for a number of different workloads, not just specifically the virtual appliances for VRP.
Right. Thank you. One last question. On storage capacity, what type of insight does APTARE Analytics provide to customers planning cloud migrations?
Well, what I was showing earlier was really focused around, you could see it was just memory and CPU, but obviously there's another aspect of that, what we're gathering from an on-prem VMware environment, which is, we know the disk capacity of a VM. We also know how many IOPS that VM is using. And we can map the VM all the way down to the spindle. So we know what kind of storage it's actually using. We know the tier of storage that it's currently using. And we also know if that the LUN is maybe being replicated to another offsite array. And so all of those components are going to be factored in, or can be factored in, when you're trying to plan a migration. You don't want to get surprised and then move something to the cloud and then find out that you've got replication requirements, and then that's going to incur additional ingress egress charges, or even potentially moving data to another availability zone. So we're going to give you all that information up front, and we can do it fairly quickly. And in fact, most of our customers that have VMware, these are just new reports that they're running to be able to just take what they were doing with APTARE before and just using it for a different purpose.
And just to kind of expand on that a little bit, one of the things that we are really keen on with our technologies is that if you look at the topology that you're using today on premises, be it VMware or even physical, and taking advantage of things like storage array replication or any form of stretch type clustering, all of those concepts can be reproduced in the public cloud using Veritas solutions, right? Whether it's NetBackup, VRP, InfoScale, APTARE, we can essentially create that consistent experience for you so that you don't sacrifice any resiliency whatsoever, but you gain all the benefits, right? All the flavor and none of the calories, I like to say sometimes. So you can have a consistent sort of experience. So your workloads will be resilient, they'll be performant, and they'll be protected.
Great. That was really amazing. And thank you so much for answering all those questions. I would like to take this time to thank you all for attending the session and your active engagement. To continue the conversation, please visit vrts.as/NBU9 and join the NetBackup 9 user group for the latest blog posts and release updates. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Whatever.
Thanks.